Welcome to the Registry Insider. I'm Bill Seifert, CEO and Executive Director of the National Roots of EMTs. And today we're going to talk with Donnie Woodyard, who is the Executive Director from the EMS Compact. And Donnie, welcome.
Well, thanks, Bill. It's great to be here.
Good. So tell us a little bit about the EMS Compact. What is it? What's its purpose? And the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the EMS Compact is one of many interstate compact agreements. And interstate compact agreements are when states pass a piece of legislation that allows multiple states to come together to solve issues that are broader than one state. Mm-hmm. And interstate compacts really date back to the origins of our nation. And it's a really unique tool for states to be able to cooperate on areas such as multi-state licensure. Mm-hmm. One of the most common compacts that a lot of people use and probably don't even know about it is the driver's license compact. So if you've ever driven in a state other than where you live and where your driver's license was issued, that's because of an interstate compact agreement. And so states say, I will recognize your license if you recognize my license. And we have a mechanism in place for public protection and for sharing data. So the EMS Compact follows that model where it allows one state's EMS license to be recognized by multiple states. And today we have 24 states that's passed this legislation. So for instance, I'm a Colorado paramedic and my Colorado paramedic license is now valid in 24 states, which is really a game changer for EMS.
It is. And so in addition to EMS licensure, what are some examples? You mentioned the driver's license. Do other allied health professionals, other healthcare professionals?
Absolutely. In fact, interstate compacts are really now the default standard for medical and occupational licensure. As of this year, there are 17 medical and occupational licensure compacts, which is really phenomenal. So we have the EMS Compact and we have the Nursing Compact, but there's also occupational therapy compacts, and there's physical therapy compacts, there's speech and audiology compacts, there's psychology, PsyPac, which is the psychology compact, there's school counseling compacts, there's really an amazing amount of compacts. There's even cosmetology and massage therapy compacts. So this is really the standard for multi-state licensure, and it's really in response to the changes in our workforce, Bill. It wasn't too many decades ago where it was common for someone to kind of grow up, stay in their hometown, return to their hometown, and then work a job for 20, 30 years until retirement. But today's workforce is very mobile. Mm-hmm. And as opposed to having to carry around 10, 20 different licenses for states, Compacts allows that. And it does so by protecting the public, which is an important element of Compacts.
So, the requirement for this is obviously, presumably they have national certification, and then they complete the licensing requirements in a state that's in the compact, and then they have the portability of that licensure.
Yeah, that's a great summary of it. So there are two components to eligibility, and it's important to keep those separate. One is the component for the state, and then the second is the component for the individual. So for instance, for the state, when a state joins the compact, that state agrees to use an established standard for licensure that is the same across all the states that join. And that requires, as you said, the state has to use National Registry certification as a requirement for the state issuing a license. You have to be 18 years old or older. The state has to do fingerprint background checks. Mm-hmm. And that's a very important thing as being a medical profession and protecting the public. So every compact state does fingerprint-based background checks, and the state then has a process for reviewing that and then issuing a license. The other thing that states have to have in place is a way of receiving complaints and processing complaints. So that's the core elements on the state side. And then on the individual side, the individual has to have an unencumbered. They have to have a license that is actually valid and unrestricted. They have to have a medical direction. They have to have an agency. And really that's because as EMS practitioners, we don't have independent practice, but we always practice as part of an entity or an agency. So those are really the two core requirements of the compact. So state requirements and then individual requirements with that.
So how does this differ from a declared emergency where there's different provisions that are put in place to allow that provision of EMS in the state, especially if an emergency is declared? Because this is in non-emergency situations it can be used.
Yeah, absolutely. So the EMS Compact is really valid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again, just like your driver's license, you don't fill out paperwork. You don't have to ask for a new stamp or endorsement before you drive in a new state. The EMS Compact is very similar. Now, when it comes to disasters, disasters typically fall into a couple categories when it comes to EMS and professional licensing. And so when a disaster happens, usually there has to be a disaster declaration. And as we know, those disaster declarations don't happen immediately. There's always some time that has to take place for that. And sometimes that's measured in hours, but oftentimes it's measured in days. And when disaster declarations come into play, there's actually another compact that was created just for disasters, and that's EMAC. The Emergency Management Assistance Compact. Now, EMAC it's an incredible compact, and that allows for a disaster area in a declared disaster to actually request resources from any other state in the United States. But that process requires a declaration of disaster. It requires an official request made through the official channels. And it has to go through that coordinated mechanism, and then the resources come in. Now, when those resources come in, EMAC, a compact adopted in all 50 states, says that state licensure in one state is recognized in the disaster zone for the official resources requested through that channel. Now, here's one of the challenges. In a disaster, yes, we have the official resources that come in, but there's also resources that come in from other mechanisms. And if the resource doesn't come through the EMAC channel, they're not covered under that licensure provision. So what we've seen oftentimes, very unfortunately, is that people respond and they try to do the right thing, but they're not an official EMAC resource. Maybe they are a mutual aid resource, or maybe they're a resource coming in just to help surge needs. Well, then they're not covered under the provision of the licensure waiver. So that's one key gap.
And if they are members of the compact state going to a compact state, they would be covered.
Absolutely. Because the compact provisions really are 24/7 in regular operations and in surge operations. Now, there's another disaster example that's out there. And sometimes in very large very large disasters, a governor might do a executive order that waives the requirement for licensure. Now, there's some inherent challenges with that. We recognize in large disasters, the number one priority is to take care of the sick and the injured and those who need assistance. And we all agree upon that. But when the provisions for licensure are just blanket waived, then the public actually oftentimes is at a risk of being disenfranchised. They're at a risk of having people who may not be validated at all coming in. And you also lose the ability for accountability, the ability to do complaints and investigations. And so really public protection is at the core. The EMS Compact preserves all the channels for public protection, disaster and non-disaster. So it's really a new tool that's been around for about 10 years now that changes the way EMS operates.
So where can people go to find out more information about the compact?
Yeah, so the Compact's official website is emscompact.gov. And it's really important to note that, it's a government site. So the Compact Commission is a governmental body created through statute, charged with managing and coordinating the interstate practice of EMS.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you taking time and chatting with us about the Compact. It's an important tool, and it continues to grow now, 24 states. Hopefully we get the balance of the states and territories in the next few years.
Absolutely. We've got 24 states as part of it, and really the vision is to have all 50 states part of this, similar to some of the other compacts that are out there. So, Bill, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And thank you as well for joining us. And as always, stay safe. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you wouldn't mind, please click the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notifications so you can get notifications of upcoming episodes. Also, for the latest and greatest happenings of the National Registry, feel free to go to nremt.org. Thank you very much. And again, stay safe.